I know a lot of working parents would never, ever share any challenges they face. I think this is why it's so significant to be talking about it, what's behind some of those kind of stories of working parents and the struggles and the challenges.
And I believe people like me and you who've been broken wide open becoming a parent and had to rebuild our authenticity and get really clear on what matters and what doesn't.
Yeah.
We are leading the change in how we work and live and lead and create and all those things.
Hey, I'm Brooke Jean, therapist, recovering perfectionist, and struggling working mom on a mission to normalize normal. If you're an overwhelmed, high-achieving, and secretly anxious mama, struggling to balance it all and on the brink of burnout, you are in the right place. Here is where we talk about hard things like balancing work and family life, mental health, and how to navigate life-altering transitions. Nothing is too taboo here. In my conversations, I'll teach you how to let go of who you think you're supposed to be in order to create the life you've always wanted. Get ready to embrace your messy, shed the shoulds, and find freedom through a life unperfected. This is the Unperfected Pod. Hey there, friend. Brooke Jean here. Welcome back. I am so glad you're here. This week's episode on the podcast is going to be a little bit different than anything I've done in the past. I am releasing a conversation that I had with a friend of mine, Marina O'Connor, where she interviewed me as the guest on her podcast, the Unstigmatized Parent Podcast. And first of all, it was just such a juicy conversation. Marina is a mental health professional and advocate and entrepreneur over in Europe. And we have so many similarities. And I'll get into what we cover in the conversation, but I also wanted to just do a quick little life update to explain a little bit about why I'm releasing a previously recorded conversation this week. While it might be something that I continue to do in the future, the reason why it's happening this week is because your girl has hit some bumps in the road with her health. And I'm going to do an entire podcast episode around everything that's happened and the journey and the treatment and the outcome and all of the lessons and blessings that I am learning going through all of this. But let me just tell you this, listen to your body. This, not yesterday, Monday, but the past Monday, I was in severe pain. I went to the ER. That led to a GI. Today, I'm getting an endoscopy and colonoscopy, and we are on the road to recovery. But when I think about what could have come if I wouldn't have taken my Fanny into the ER, which is something that for some reason, as moms, is so hard for us to do, right? Like, we'll take our kids to the ER over a cough, okay, over a scraped freaking knee. I'll be the first in line if I need to. But when the heck was the last time you took your own Fanny to the ER? Like, it's just not something we do. And some of the health issues that I'm going through right now are very acute, and I did not see them coming. And they are overlapping with more chronic, long-term conditions that I've kind of always known intuitively I should get checked out. And I just put it off and put it off and put it off. And so if there has been something that the universe has been nudging you to get it checked out, if there's something in your gut that you know is going on in your body, please make that appointment today, mama. And I hope that when I do get to that episode where I explain everything that's going on, that I inspire you to take that action. Because even somebody like me, who stands for moms taking care of themselves, who stands for women listening to their body, who stands for mental and emotional well-being and self-care, even I overlooked some things and still have some work to do. But I am going to be okay. I am 100% sure of that. And I also feel like deep down, this is all happening for me to put me on some sort of health journey that is going to help me feel my best and therefore be my best. So that's a little bit about what's going on with me. More to come on them apples. But for today, this conversation with my friend Marina O'Connor is a freaking juicy one. So, in this conversation, we cover all sorts of things, but the first one is really how we have so much similarities in how some things that we were going through internally and personally led us to make a major life pivot in our career midway through. So we both left the corporate and business world to become mental health professionals. And we talked about how we both had a tendency to hide our unresolved trauma behind our achievements in those business and corporate settings. Like we had the same drive and the same perfectionism because we thought if I just keep doing, if I just keep performing, I can outrun my pain. That at the time was totally unconscious. We talk about the overlap of leadership and parenthood and how so much of being a parent is being a great leader and the beautiful, beautiful impact that we can have on the world in being mothers. We share the concept of vulnerable leadership. What does that actually mean? And what is wrong in the corporate settings right now that has people not feeling like it's safe to come forward and say, I'm struggling, I need time off, I need, you know, a different schedule or a different situation, or I'm going through depression. Like, as far as we've come in the world in talking about mental health, we still have so much more work to do because it doesn't feel like it's okay to raise your hand to your bosses in the corporate setting and say, hey, I'm really struggling with depression and here's the support that I'm going to need. Or I'm, in a treatment plan for PTSD and here's what I'm going to need. It doesn't feel safe. And so we talk about the cost to organizations and businesses by not actually having true, authentic, vulnerable leadership, which is basically a lot of struggling people suffering in silence and not coming forward, which has created things like burnout and other psychological issues on your team. And this is, I believe, part of this quiet quitting thing that we got going on is, yeah, people from the pandemic had a lot of spiritual awakenings around who am I and what do I want with my life and what matters most to me. And I also think a lot of people are suffering with things like anxiety and depression, and they have nowhere to go with that in the work setting. And they just have to come to work and act like everything is fun and fine and be passionate. And that leads to a place that they can no longer tolerate, and so they start quiet quitting before they actually fully quit. And so I do believe that we have a real call of duty as leaders across the world to learn how to be vulnerable, to learn how to create safe spaces where people can tell us what's really going on, to learn how to offer reasonable accommodations to truly support people's mental and emotional well being. Because let's face it, guys, this can't just be a buzzword. This has to be an integrated practice that we live in and embody every single day. And we're scared to do that because so many leaders haven't done the hard work of doing their own internal, vulnerable, individual work. So they don't know how to hold that space for their teams. But it's time. I think if you truly want to have a successful and sustainable business and you want to have a team that is fully engaged and feels seen and heard and therefore committed to the mission and the vision, we have got to make this a priority and a real one. So, anyways, I loved this conversation. I am definitely going to have Marina on the podcast to talk about intergenerational trauma because that is kind of her specialty. And she's just such a wealth of knowledge around that and how that affects us and our families and even our organizations. So, this is a juicy one, guys. Give it a listen. Let me know what you think. Share it on Instagram, share it with a friend. And also, don't forget to join us in the Mommy's Mental Health Matters Facebook group if you haven't already. I love you. Take care of yourselves and therefore each other. See you guys next week.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the podcast that's called Unstigmatised Parent Podcast. And on this podcast, we talk about various emotional demands of parenting and also growing up by healing transgenerational trauma. And today, my guest is Brooke. Hi. Hi, Brooke.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for coming. And Brooke is psychotherapist, counselor, coach, and consultant. And the topic we're going to talk today about, I think it's a fascinating one, and it is about leadership and parenting. And when I think just kind of, I'll give a quick backside story, I guess. When we've spoken with you before doing the recording, we kind of shared our own history because I think both of us kind of switched the career path. We both been on the business side of things, obviously in our own kind of ways. And then we changed the career, and then we started, we moved to psychotherapy world, to mental health world. So I just want you to kind of share a little bit about your journey. I know kind of we've spoken outside of the podcast also about your journey as a working parent and a leader. Again, when you were working kind of on the corporate side of things. So could you just share a bit about that? Just kind of to give a bit of context for the topic of today's episode.
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I am excited to have this conversation. And like you mentioned, my name is Brooke Jean and my brand is Brooke Jean Unperfected. And really, what we do is we leverage counseling, coaching, and consulting to help people find freedom through a life unperfected. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really about unbecoming who you thought you were supposed to be in order to connect to your authentic expression and integrate, and then what's possible for you, especially in business and leadership on the other side of that. And so,
I love that.
yeah, I've been doing this for 7 years now, but prior to that, I was a corporate leader. So my story is I became a mom in college. So I'm here in the United States, went to college, and my senior year got pregnant with my firstborn, Camden. And that
Mhm.
really changed the trajectory of my life, where I knew I was going to be a single mom. I knew I had to get a steady career. I went to the career fair and I fell in love with the leadership program for this retail organization called Target. You may have heard of it.
Mhm. Yes, I
And
have. Yeah.
yes, you have. Okay. So as a single mom, I started my Target career as an HR executive in the store. And then I got promoted to do kind of a group level training and leadership development assignment. And then I got promoted to actually run a store. And then I got promoted to a higher volume store. So I spent 10 years kind of climbing that corporate ladder, being a corporate leader while raising my son.
Yeah.
And was really driven from a place of fear of wanting to provide and protect and hiding a lot of my traumas behind my achievements in that corporate
Mhm.
climb. And
Yeah.
because I was really burning the candle at both ends, trying to be the perfect mother and the perfect leader, I full blown burnt out of that career at just 33
Mhm.
years old. And basically had to do a major pivot in my life of, I've done what I needed to do for a decade. What do I want to do with this one precious and wild life that I have? And it was at that point that I left the corporate career, got into therapy, shed the corporate skin, figured out who I was underneath all these roles and responsibilities, went back to school to get my master's in counseling psychology, and then launched my business 2 days after graduation and have been building it
Mhm.
ever since. And then also got married and had my second child, my daughter, 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago. So I have a
Yeah.
14 age gap. So I can also
Yeah.
speak
Yeah.
to the differences of being a working parent at 22 versus 42.
Yeah.
'Cause they're
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
challenges. But I've learned a lot about myself in navigating those two worlds, leadership, entrepreneurship, and
Mhm.
parenthood.
Yeah, yeah. And, I just want to ask you because obviously, and we've kind of spoken about it a little bit, my experience of kind of working on a corporate side, running my own business, which was like VC backed, so there was a lot of kind of pressures, similarly to what you were talking about, to perform, also, obviously to kind of being a woman and a very like male dominated business. In my case, it was a car business, so there was all this kind of pressures, I guess, to make sure. But my experience was well before I was a parent. And obviously, when I did become a parent, I guess I had the privilege of kind of running my own business. So I had kind of some level of flexibility and, obviously pressures that come with that, because being self-employed is a very kind of different way of, and, it can be also complex. But I just want to ask you, what did you feel with that experience you're sharing about in your 20s, when, you were also a single parent, when you had a little baby and you had that kind of corporate role that was so like demanding? What do you think was the biggest challenge for you? And also I want to ask with you, what kind of support did you have? And what was kind of, I guess, the attitude or kind of some of the perceptions or, just beliefs in the company, in the corporate world that kind of supported or not supported you as a working parent? So where do you feel like the most challenge come from for you?
Yeah. The biggest challenge was that I didn't ask for help. I didn't have
Mhm.
support around me. We don't really rally around our mothers and our parents in a community way that we should be and could be doing. I had this belief that I needed to be it all, that I needed to be
Mhm.
perfect. I needed to kick butt in my career and still be in my son's classroom once a week to volunteer,
Mhm.
come to every soccer practice and bake the homemade organic gluten-free dairy-free cookies for the class party. I was
Yeah.
learning it, I was doing it all, and I wasn't asking for help. And it's because I had these conditioned beliefs around what a good enough mom and a good leader
Mhm.
and a hard worker was. Now, the positive belief was I knew I could handle becoming a mother and going through pregnancy and delivering my son, which was a whole freaking situation. He didn't want to come out. Let me just say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And taking a newborn to college to finish my degree. And like, I knew that I had some source of strength and resilience that
Mhm.
I could rely on to be okay in the world. And then I also believed that there was safety and security in that corporate setting. There was
Mhm.
pay, there was ton of growth opportunities, there was big bonuses, there was good benefits. And so I really thought this corporate is a container for safety for me and my son. And as the sole provider for him at the time, I
Yeah.
really wanted that. But in the corporate pressure, there's always more you can do. There's always a bigger
Mhm.
assignment. And it was my kind of childhood wounding and my perfectionism that made me the
Mhm.
perfect candidate for that disaster, right? Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was the yes person. Yes, I'll take on the most
Yeah.
challenging score that's broken and fix it. Yes, I'll try to become a district manager. Yes, I'll take on that extra thing. Meanwhile, saying yes to everything in my son's life. And so I was
Mhm.
really trying to operate as like a what you would deem a really good stay-at-home mom, at least here in our culture, and a really good leader. I was really trying to do both. And I believed that
Yeah.
I was supposed to. And I
Yeah.
didn't ask for help. I didn't have family support. My family didn't live
Mhm.
here. I was co-parenting with an ex. That was a big challenge. I did eventually meet my partner. He was part of my support, but I didn't outsource anything like I do now because
Yeah.
I believed I was supposed to be able to do it and do it well and look good and be grateful and all those things. And that's what made me sick. Trying to be
Mhm.
all the things. I
Yeah.
was working my butt off during the day, tending to everybody else's needs, and then taking a sledgehammer to my mental health at night by drinking a bottle of wine and eating a plate of brie
Mhm.
cheese and shopping mindlessly. So
Yeah.
the biggest struggle was I was asleep and unconscious and very driven from unhealthy beliefs that I should be able to figure it all out. And that's why I burnt out at 33 years old. And now at
Yeah.
42, the whole setup is so different.
Yeah, yeah. And, just kind of listening to the journey that you've had, I'm kind of thinking, I guess, of two things, from one side. And actually, it's interesting. I just kind of done a short video today and where kind of I was talking about how a lot of us kind of grow up with the belief that love is earned, and I think kind of, as a child receiving some of the messages that are around, you're noticed or accepted or loved or you belong when you are performing, when you're good, or where you're doing something that's expected, just kind of having all this conditional love, or kind of conditional like and acceptance that we receive. This is very easy to kind of then obviously grow up and having the same kind of beliefs also when it comes to that inability to ask for help. Because I think, and this is also something that I've struggled with every time I perceived myself failing or not good enough, then I was kind of, just connected with that part of myself that, okay, something is wrong, something is bad, maybe I don't deserve something, so there was kind of that part of me that was very kind of isolated in the sense that something might be wrong with me on a deeper level, and that's why I need to do more and I need to try harder and I need to, just stay at work, I don't know, like from 7 in the morning until 1 in the morning, just because of. And I completely kind of, as I was listening to you, and I was thinking of adding, all those layers that you were talking about of having a baby, and co-parenting. I just really, I just kind of can only think of the challenges. And it's almost like I'm thinking of the burnout as a very kind of natural coping strategy to come out of that in the end, where you're kind of just functioning in a survival mode for so many years. And it's kind of also something that would happen. And another thing that I was kind of thinking of, and I don't know if kind of your experience, that very often in the corporate world, because of how, again, like success driven, like an achievements driven, obviously it is, there is no kind of space for vulnerability. When you were talking about your birth and you kind of just briefly mentioned that. But I know a lot of working parents would never, ever share any challenges they face as they, go back to work, or what they struggle with when they're just working. And of course, I think mostly for working moms. And I also know like a lot of working dads who would never bring something in the workplace because of that. Almost there's no permission to be human, to be vulnerable. So what's your experience with that? I guess
Yeah.
I just kind of spoke about two different things, but this is what came up for me when I was listening to you.
Well, it's interesting because they relate. There's a bridge between the
Yeah.
two things you're mentioning. So first, I want to say, when you were talking about the search for love and acceptance and how that translates with achievement, I grew up, I'm the oldest, and I have two siblings. One is special needs and was born with a brain tumor, and one has severe
Oh.
mental health problems. So I made a conscious choice at 8 years old that I was not going to be a stress or a problem to the family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
translated into work, that I would be the top performer, the store you don't have to worry about, the team you don't have to worry about. And I very much would pride myself that I wasn't the problem. I was never the burden. I was the one you didn't need to worry about. And that came from childhood. Those beliefs came from childhood. And so if you can imagine somebody who's got those beliefs combined with a work environment where there is no understanding of mental and emotional health and well-being, there is no open dialogue around struggle to be human, I adopted this no matter what was going on in my internal world, whether it was a hard birth or, these unhealthy coping mechanisms that would throw me into a daily shame spiral. There was no place to share that. It was always, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm great.
Yeah.
And trying to prove that, even though I wasn't. And that kind of lack of congruence, where you are outwardly projecting, I'm fine, everything's great, because you don't want to be a problem. While dying on the inside, it catches up to you. But no, there was no place. In the last position that I had before I left corporate, I was running a very challenging super target. And there was a mass theater shooting in Aurora, Colorado, that was across the street from my store. And most of my early morning logistics team was in that theater. And we actually lost a team member in that mass shooting. And it was an absolute collective trauma and crisis that I got to guide my team through. And it was that crisis that triggered my trauma that also helped me realize what my real calling was, which was to take care of people at a much deeper level than being an executive leader.
Yeah.
But in that experience of going through a community mass shooting, that triggering my trauma, being a parent and
Yeah.
navigating, when people corporate would fly in and check in with me, and I never once said,
Yeah.
struggling. This is
Yeah.
hard. This has triggered me. I need help. I just one foot in front of the other plowed through because honestly, I didn't feel like it was safe to say I was struggling.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And those projections you're talking about, they're so powerful. And and the way we kind of project that, like an internal dialogue that we have onto other people, and kind of just take away those permissions, to say, I need help, this is too much, maybe I need a break or whatever, because of those projections happens so much. And I think another thing that in the corporate world, sometimes because we don't know those personal stories very often, right? Like what you were sharing, just kind of having that perception of someone who has everything under control. And I'm sure you were, successful, and the way that you were kind of perceived by many people was very different to what you're describing, how you felt. And, I remember when I was kind of working again, like in a car company, and there was all these leaders, female leaders who were like having a baby, and then they would come back to work, just in a couple of days or like in a week or in 2 weeks. Or when I was working like with this VC fund, the CEO of the fund, she was also a woman, and she had a baby, and she was like, I was talking to her as she was having a baby in the hospital, and she was like, I am, yeah, she's like, I'm in labor, but let's catch up, let's have a catch up. And that was again before I've had children. So I kind of like thought, that was normal. So there's something about this lack of humanity, lack of vulnerability that's really being normalized.
Mhm.
And then this is kind of what I've like thought, this is just how things are. So I've like internalized all of that. And as I was becoming a parent, I think this is how it's going to be. This
Mhm.
is how I'm going to be a working parent, because that was supposedly what I saw. But obviously, again, as I'm saying, we don't know the story
Mhm.
behind it. We
Mhm.
never know. And now, because when you share your story, I think this is why it's so significant to be talking about it, what's behind some of those kind of stories of working parents and the struggles and the challenges.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that having conversations like this and having experienced that has pushed me to be a different kind of leader that is
Mm,
changing that paradigm. So
mm,
now at 42, the way that I lead my team, the leadership that I show up with in the world
mm.
is different because I lived through that. So I believe that those challenges that I went through as a working parent has allowed me to tap into something really deep and meaningful inside of my
Yeah.
leadership that wants to change that culture, even in the corporate setting. Where are we racing toward? What do we think we're accomplishing working till 1 in the morning? We now have science and research that shows we really only have 4 hours of amazing cognitive
Mhm.
fuel a day. What the hell are we working 12 hours
Yeah.
for? And really
Yeah.
starting to be the change and lead
Mhm.
through that change so we can create a healthier world and a way to be successful that I believe taps into our real resources, not just production and more and all that. But when we slow down and we are vulnerable and we have place to share scary things and we take care of ourselves and we do the mental health work, I believe we can access deeper parts of our own wisdom and creativity, and we can connect with our purpose and our power and our potential. And from there, we can create. So we really are
Yeah.
entering this new era where that old paradigm is no longer serving us. We are unwell
Mhm.
because we've done it that way. And I believe people like me and you who've been broken wide open becoming a parent
Mm.
and had to rebuild
Mhm.
our authenticity and get really clear on what matters and what doesn't.
Yeah.
We are leading the change in how we work and live and lead and create and all those things. And so in that
Yeah.
case, there's a lot of purpose behind the pain and the struggle that I went through in those first 10 years of being a working parent. And I do things very, very differently now. And ironically, I'm much more successful doing it this way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, I think a lot of parents, I mean, obviously, I guess our kind of journeys, they're different and quite unique in terms of, changing those like careers, making some of those choices to be able to have, I guess, like an awareness, but also the tools to kind of support, ourselves. And, still I struggle daily, even kind of with all that toolkit and like knowledge and awareness, it hasn't removed by any chance by, like the difficulty, the struggle, the kind of things I'm trying to cope with or like navigate. But I think for the parents who didn't have a journey like this, who are actually kind of stuck in a way, in this, what you were talking before, and now this like idea that now as a working parent, I need to do it all. I need to kind of somehow find this balance, that is often society speaks about as it's almost something that you need to achieve. And if you don't achieve this balance, then you're already failing, So I think for those parents, it can be really kind of difficult to start like advocating for some of the things we're talking about. I don't want to be like in this box, I want some flexibility, especially if the companies are kind of not open already for it. So kind of what do you think the ways those working parents can perhaps start a little bit, maybe relieving some of kind of internal pressure while we're kind of still aiming to change this whole corporate attitude towards working parents and the flexibility and mental health generally and the openness and the kind of honesty around talking about mental health?
Yeah. So, kind of the 3-step process that organically has emerged as I'm guiding
Mhm.
mothers and women through this transition has been what I call normalizing normal, shedding
Mhm.
shoulds, and claiming space. And so the first thing is normalizing the struggle, like you just so beautifully did. Like,
Mm.
even though I've crafted these really beautiful days that are not too much
Yeah.
and self care, let's be real, being a mother stretches me in ways I didn't know
Mhm.
was possible. I'm meeting my edge every day.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
normalizing normal and knowing that, like, as a working parent, there is a wide range of normal. You're not getting it
Mhm.
wrong. There is no
Mhm.
right and wrong. There is a wide range of normal. So if you're struggling in your marriage, let's normalize that. If you're struggling in your
Yeah.
identity, let's normalize that.
Mhm.
If your brain feels foggy and not working right,
Yeah.
let's normalize that. There's a wide range of normal, and just normalizing it allows people to speak their struggle into existence, removing the shame. You're not wrong. You're not getting it wrong. You're not bad. There's a wide range of normal struggle. Let's normalize that and let's talk about it so people
Mhm.
can not feel bad about whatever their struggle is. The second
Yeah.
thing is what I call shedding the shoulds, right? We're all driven
Mhm.
by what we think we're supposed to do. I
Mhm.
should work till 1 in the morning because I picked my kiddo up from school. I'm supposed to cook an organic gluten-free turkey on Thanksgiving. It's like, listen to me. Listen to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything cannot be the most important thing anymore.
Mhm. Mhm.
Getting
Yeah.
clear on what actually matters to you as a parent, what values you have, what values you hold in your family. So maybe quality time is the most important to you. So then we don't need to be going gangbusters on the
Yeah.
growth of our business. But maybe growth is important to you. So we don't need to have a perfect diet and, whatever. Like, we're trying to do all the things and we need to just toss all that out and get clear of, like,
Mhm.
what actually matters to me,
Yeah.
what actually means something to me, what lights me up. And those are the things I make space for. Those are the things that I give time, energy, and sanity. And the rest, I gotta let that go. I
Mhm.
gotta let it
Mhm.
go. I'm not passionate about that. So I'm not gonna pretend like I'm passionate about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
claiming space is like, once you have some clarity of what really does matter, it is creating just a little bit of spaciousness for yourself to regulate your nervous system, to get a
Mhm.
full exhale and inhale. So that might look like taking 60-second mini pauses throughout your day if you don't feel like you have any time. That might
Yeah.
look like getting up before your family and doing a 10-minute morning ritual. That might look like asking your partner, I need you to pick up the kids on Tuesdays and Thursdays so I can go cycle or go to this dance class. That might look like asking your neighbor, let's do a trade on Saturday morning. I do the kids this Saturday, you the next, so I could go journal or hike or create or connect. Like, it's looking at where can I have a pocket of spaciousness to
Yeah.
breathe, to regulate, and to remember who the heck I am under all
Yeah.
these responsibilities. And
Yeah.
then once you start asking for help, setting some boundaries,
Mhm.
claiming some space, you realize the world isn't falling apart and you start to feel a little bit better. So then you expand that. Maybe you want to then get into therapy. Maybe you want to go on a women's retreat. Maybe you want to walk every single night from 6:30 to 7:30. You start to claim a little bit more. And so you have to try different things to see what's going to best serve your mental and emotional well-being, because what serves
Mhm.
me is different than what you need and your family needs. But I think as
Yeah.
women, particularly, we've been conditioned to put everyone first and to not claim that
Exactly.
space. But
Yes.
I put
Yeah.
that stuff first so I
Yeah.
can now be the most intentional I can be throughout my day, which ends up helping me be more present or, a more conscious parent. And I'm not saying I'm perfect because I am a hot mess express, honey, but I
Yeah.
am more
Yeah.
present and I'm
Yeah.
less resentful because I have these little mini pauses or pockets where I'm
Yeah.
focused on my inner world and my mind, body, and spirit world too.
Yeah. And I just really, I love what you're saying. And like it resonates so much. I think prioritizing yourself, you know, messy, sometimes, lost, sometimes, I don't know, like angry, sad, shameful, whatever it is, just by really prioritizing, because I think that's kind of, in between, I guess, being like a working parent or like a leader and being a parent, there's so much giving happening. There's so many demands that this is something that has such a big impact on mental health. What my needs are not important anymore. What I want is not like, my desires are not, there's no space for fun. There's no space for pleasure. It's all kind of about this sense of duty. And of course, all of those kind of the messages we were talking about around corporate world, but also like around motherhood being a sacrifice, giving. And now you need to 100% of time think about your children and just be mindful. So all of those ideas about those things being fixed are just kind of so unhelpful. And I think what you are saying is really making space for you, for yourself, for the parts of self that, all of us have, and making just like space for the things that are kind of important and significant outside of being a parent, just making sure that all of those sides are recognized. And obviously we might not be able to respond to all those needs we have. And life is about those like chapters you were talking about, being a parent at 20, being a parent at 40, having those realizations and different. But I think just making space and prioritizing is it's a must have, right? It's like taking care of our bodies, taking care of our mental health. And that's, for me, it's a huge part of parental modeling as well. If I'm tired, I'm tired. Like yesterday, I literally went to bed at 9 because I had a long working day and I just checked out and I said, I'm tired and I'm
Yeah.
going to go to bed. And,
Yes.
and
Yes. There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah, yeah. But I think it's like there was this internal voice that telling me you're not good enough. Your
Mhm,
children are just going to watch cartoons for 2 hours when you are just sleeping.
mhm.
Like that's
You
a basic.
should be entertaining them. You should.
Exactly.
You should
Yeah,
spend every waking minute with your kiddos soaking it
exactly.
up because there's only 12
Yeah,
summers left. It's like, listen.
yeah, yeah. Because you want to be a present parent, as it's also something fixed. You're always present, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. No. I think we have to model for our children it's safe and okay to be human. And in the human
Yeah.
existence is a wide range of normal. Sometimes we're fun and energized. Sometimes we're tired. Sometimes we're sad. Sometimes we feel insecure. Sometimes we go out
Yeah.
and kill it. Can we model for them the messiness and the wide range of normal for that? So then they learn to advocate for their needs as
Yeah.
well. But I do want to normalize how hard that is because we are
Mhm.
conditioned to believe that good mothers put everyone else first. And so
Mhm.
if you are listening to this and you are struggling with claiming a little space for yourself, I get it. It's a
Yeah.
process of making that a priority. I can't tell you how many mothers I work with. I say, okay, I can coach you on how to find 2 hours a day for yourself.
Mhm.
I have a system and a method. What would you do with that 2 hours?
Mhm.
They look at me like a deer in headlights. They're like, I have no, and I say, no chores. We're not doing the
Yeah.
budget. We're not doing the grocery shopping. No chore for fun and pleasure and play.
Mm.
What will you do? Brooke, I have no idea. I don't
Mhm.
even know
Yeah.
what I like anymore. I don't even know what's fun for me anymore. And so, in these little pockets that I'm suggesting you claim in your day, if you regulate your nervous system and do some deep breathing, maybe just start to ask, what does feel good in my body? What is the thing I've been longing for? And maybe your body doesn't tell you right away because you've been so good at
Yeah.
ignoring it for so long.
Yeah.
It's okay. You're starting to rebuild the trust with yourself. You're starting to open the channels of communication, but that truth is still in there that will bubble up
Yeah.
and say, I
Yeah.
want to dance again. And
Yeah.
then you go, oh my God, why have I stopped dancing? What can I
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
And maybe you just for 5 minutes when you're brushing your teeth with your kids, you put on your
Mhm.
favorite song and you dance. Maybe you dance in your kitchen, but start small, even if it's 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10
Yeah.
minutes a day. Regulate and ask yourself these juicy questions. Says the truth and your authentic essence lies in there still. It's just
Yeah.
buried under these shoulds
Absolutely.
and these roles.
Yeah.
And then when you get it and you know it, let's break out of this belief that we
Yeah.
can't take the time to be a healthy, alive person. You will be a
Yeah.
better
And
leader and a better mother when you do these things.
yeah. Yeah. And and it's literally the thing that you're saying, it's literally like training a muscle for the first time in your life. It's kind of, I don't
Yes.
know, like I've started running when I was 30. I've never ran before in my life. And where I started running, I couldn't even run for a minute or two. It took me 10 years to get to the point where I can run for hours. And I think this is that kind of journey of just really starting to recognize, to just even not even recognize, start with just questioning. I think those questions that you said, what this new version of me likes, what's this kind of new version that has the work and the parenting, the career, the like, and whatever it is, everything that's important, what do I like? And just to start with that curiosity. And as you've said, it's not going to come straight away. And it is so difficult sometimes. I really, identify with that, to recognize, to even answer that simple question, what do I want? But I think just try starting to train that muscle by curiosity and just by making space, all of the things that you were saying, is like a process of prioritizing your mental health and just prioritizing yourself, because it's just the most important thing, is it for ourselves and ultimately everyone around us, including the children. But yeah, I really, want to thank you for this conversation. I just love your passion. I love thank you for sharing the journey you're on, and the transformation you've had. And I really, just hope that through kind of having those conversations, and especially of doing the work with corporates, because I'm very passionate, and I do believe that this is where the change is going to come from, by actually companies to start openly talking about those vulnerabilities, about some of the things that we've discussed. So I just really want to thank you for coming, for sharing about this, and for creating a conversation, and, just really owning your story. Thank you
Yes,
so
it's
much.
a privilege. Absolutely. And thank you for starting the conversation and being part of,
Mhm.
co-creating a new normal where it's okay to be
Yeah.
people and be human. And I'm excited to
Yeah.
see what that translates to when we
Yeah.
all start taking care of ourselves and each other in that way. It's really a beautiful
Yeah.
thing.
Me
Thank you.
too. Me too. Thank you so much, Brooke.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Unperfected Pod. I hope this episode helped you feel a little less alone and a little more inspired to be you. If you like what we're doing here, I would so appreciate that you subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. If you do, share the episode on Instagram and tag me at Brooke Jean Unperfected to enter to win a 1-to-1 laser coaching session. Also, feel free to join me in my private Facebook community, Mommy's Mental Health Matters, where we continue the conversation. Thanks again for being here, and see you in next week's episode.